Well, I think it's full steam ahead to an extent, Brian. We're not changing our strategy just because of the rising cases that we've seen from the Delta variant. I think a couple weeks ago when the headlines first hit, then we saw the markets pull back and there was a lot of concern about lockdowns going back into place and what we were going to see going forward. That's all come off a little bit, right? Maybe we have more restrictions in place and there's another push for the vaccinations. But I think the real concern is that it just delays the reopening and pushes it out further. And for us, what we're looking at in regards to that is these temporary inflation components that we thought we would probably start to see winding down at this point. Perhaps they go on a little bit longer and then become not so temporary. They start to become more permanent in regards to wages, in regards to rents, in the supply chain issues that we're seeing. So we like to have a balanced approach in our portfolio. We keep some of those growth names, but we're starting to add some cyclical, some value names as the reopening trade continues to develop.
And we'll get to some of those names in a minute. But, Gina, I want to get to an issue that millions of parents care about. And when I say millions, I mean where you are. Los Angeles, L.A. County, the biggest county in the United States. 10 million people, millions of kids, schools locked down all of last year. How much of this reopening, the economy, is tied to kids being able to go back to school in the fall, not going back to virtual? Because when they go back to virtual, a lot of families, particularly those that can't afford learning pods and nannies, they are going to not be able to go to work, and that will damage the economy again.
Brian, I think that's a bigger component than people are realizing. There was a going assumption that as we went into the summer, as cases fell dramatically and vaccinations started to slow, that we were turning the corner and things were getting back to normal. And one of the assumptions of normalcy was children going back to school, which would allow parents to focus on either finding new jobs or going back to their existing jobs. And that is actually a bigger component than we think, because if suddenly you don't have children going back to school, you have to deal with not being able to focus on your own job. You may not be able to find a job. All of that locked up, pent-up demand doesn't get unleashed in the same way. And that's the biggest assumption right now, is unleashed consumption. Pent-up demand unleashing itself into the economy and driving the economy forward.
Yeah. If you're a CNBC viewer, Gina, I'll stay with you. You know, we forget that there are tens of millions of people that can't work remotely. And by the way, thank God for all of them. At the stores, at the restaurants, wherever they are, they cannot simply zoom into work like we can. If they don't go to work, they can't leave their 8-year-olds home alone. By the way, a lot of first responders and healthcare workers also have younger children. As you look out, and I know it's hard to predict, do you see any risk that the L.A. County schools will go back virtual again?
Actually, I don't see that risk as high as I'm sort of playing out the fat tail if it does happen. I actually think that it is most likely that we will go back to some form of in-person schooling. So, you know, and I think, you know, that may be also a level of hope as well. But one thing that we are seeing in response to this is an increasing number of vaccinations. So while vaccinations had slowed through the summer, we're actually seeing vaccination rates starting to increase again, because we have new urgency. And that new urgency will help kind of get us through this trade. And I think the sooner you see vaccinations get approved for children, that will also make an enormous difference.